Hi, I'm David Palmer at BYU Idaho Statistics and Data Science program. I'm here with Jakob Shurtleff, and he's going to talk to us about an interesting analysis that he did. But maybe before we dive into it, Jacob, you can tell us a little bit about what's the overarching research question and why did you choose this topic?
Yeah, so my overarching question has to do with how different words or theological ideas appear throughout the Bible and how that usage has changed based on kind of the point in history at which it was used and how people might have thought of ideas differently at different times of the Bible. And so the way that I kind of looked into that, I have three main questions here. So the first one is for the term Satan. So how has the name Satan evolved throughout the Bible, and has the understanding of his character changed? How has the concept of resurrection changed or been used throughout the Bible? And has the concept of repentance, how has the concept of repentance been used throughout the Bible? That's a typo.
Okay. So when I'm guessing your data is the text of
Yeah.
these scriptures.
So I have four data sources. So I have a Hebrew data source where it takes all of the words in Hebrew and has a bunch of information on them, like grammatical information and stuff like that. Then I have a Greek data source for the New Testament. And then I have a NRSV data source, which is the New Revised Standard Version English translation. And then I have a kind of like a bridge data source, which is a text file that shows how the verse alignments are different between the NRSV and the Hebrew data source because there's some differences in the numbering so that I could align them.
What would you say was your biggest headache and how did you overcome it? Maybe you can show us the
It
code you
was
used to overcome it.
probably the aligning because what I needed to do was show how like what word selection the translators picked for a specific word so I could understand what it means in context, which the Hebrew data, it doesn't tell you, like what is the English translation in context. And so originally I just wanted to join the data. So I think I have the NRSV somewhere down here. Yeah, so this is the NRSV data. So we'll have the text and then kind of the reference. Or this actually might be after I joined it. No, this is after I joined it. So after I originally just wanted to join it on the reference, but the problem is that the references are different sometimes in the Hebrew Bible versus in the English translations. And so I needed to pull this. Where is it at?
You can zoom in if you want.
Oh, here it is. Yeah, this is it. So I needed to pull this data source. So I pulled it down at the end here, but this is the function that I made for it. And so this data source wasn't like a data frame or anything. It's just a text file. And so I have a section that has like these list range of verses are equal to these range of verses. So as you can see, I had to make a bunch of regex in order to build the actual like rules of how to realign the verse or
the block of text.
Yeah, to realign the references so that they could join together.
Okay.
And then I joined them down here so that I can have the Hebrew word that is used in the verse, and then the text of the NRSV. And then I just pulled out whatever word they chose to translate it to.
Yeah.
And so then I could see like in context, what did it mean according to experts?
What did you have to use a different encoding rather than the UTF-8 to get all this Hebrew?
No, that was just normal like characters.
Okay.
So,
Well, maybe you can talk a little bit about one of your visualizations, one or two that really kind of drive home or answer the
yeah,
question.
so I'd say the visualizations are probably the biggest weak point because I pretty much have all bar charts because it's hard to come up with another way to visualize it that is relevant to the kind of questions I'm asking. But this one is showing the difference in the type of noun that appears throughout the Bible. So with the term for Satan, you'll notice that pretty much everywhere in the Old Testament it's going to use like adversary or an adversary or the adversary, something like that, versus actually using it as like a first person name, capital like S Satan, is pretty much exclusively the New Testament, except for you've got a little bit in like First Corinthians here. So a little bit towards the end of the Old Testament. So that may mark kind of a transition point in which people were really like theologically kind of developing this idea of like, oh, like it's not just a title for a enemy to God, but it's a specific character.
And of course there are more books than you're showing here. So the other books just don't even.
Yeah, so the other books don't use the word for Satan at all.
Okay.
And then we've got the question of resurrection. Actually, I think the later ones are better because they use a lot more books.
Okay.
This is a more interesting one to look at. So the one for repentance.
Zoom in a little bit. I'm gonna hold down control. Just there we go.
So the idea of repentance shows up all over the Bible, so it's more interesting to look at, I think. And you can see, so this chart just counts the amount of times repentance is talked about. And the way that I found this doesn't just look for the word repentance. I kind of looked for some kinds of phrasing that might be indicating repentance, because sometimes people might be saying like to turn back to God or something like that. So if it explicitly mentions repentance, it counts it.
Sure.
But if it uses something like to return or something like that in the verse, then it has to also be talking about sin or transgression or something in order to indicate that it's probably about repentance. And so what I got when it just counts it, some of these books that are a bit larger and generally are talking about repentance are going to have a ton of counts for them, versus smaller books generally, even if that's what they're talking about, they're not going to have it so much.
Right.
So to try and correct for that, I made another chart where I divided by the verse count of the book in order to get average mentions per verse.
Okay.
One thing that did is I think it kind of like inflated some of the books that are small, like Jonah. Because if it is really small and it mentions it like once or twice, it's gonna get a really huge score. And so the last chart is I took the average of the two metrics of total number mentioned and mentions per verse to get kind of like a in-between idea. And so it maintains a lot of the ones that have a lot of mentions, as well as not overinflating the small books. And I noticed it's kind of interesting. You've got almost like this like sinusoidal, like you got humps over time and then like low points. And after some like historical research of the time periods in which those happen, I noticed that you tend to get the humps around some time that Israel was going through some like really tough times. So for example, like you've got the first one, like Amos. They were preaching right before like the northern kingdom of Israel, I think, was destroyed. And then you've got obviously like Jeremiah and Ezekiel are known for.
Are these sorted in any particular?
So they're sorted according to the chronological order that scholars believe the books were produced.
Okay.
So I used AI to help me figure that out and produce the list. It's up here somewhere.
That's okay.
Probably above the first plot, but it's just
it's okay.
It's just a vector of when the books were produced according to scholars.
Yeah, that's great. That's a very insightful analysis. Thank you, Jacob. We're gonna see if I can get this to